Before we get started here, Iowa Postgame from the Hawkeye of the Storm. I want to thank our sponsor, Brad Van Meter, and his team down at State Farm. If you haven't yet done so, give Brad a call, and he can get you a great quote, hopefully on better rates and tremendous coverage and a tremendous team down in Des Moines. Brad and his small State Farm team on Fluor Drive in Des Moines can serve you, or whether it's auto insurance, home insurance, renters, whatever the case may be. 515-256-6480. That's 515-256-6480. Or online at bradvanmeter.com. You can also find his link and all of our sponsor links in the description of this video. Also want to take a moment to thank Iowa Smokehouse. Tasting is believing with Iowa Smokehouse's jerky. They've got their steak bites, which I enjoyed yesterday. They've also got their meat sticks of different types. Awesome variety, folks. And it's a local Iowa company. It's fresh. It's good quality. It's not like some of those household names, but national brands that maybe are not so fresh. Iowa Smokehouse. Use the code Hawkeyes for 15% off your total order. You'll get free shipping on every $50 order. And as you support our sponsors, you're supporting us. Tasting is believing with Iowa Smokehouse. So the Iowa Hawkeyes, the women, falling at home to the Kansas State Wildcats, losing to Kansas State for the second straight year. I'll be very intrigued. We got about 80 people here who are watching, logging on early, probably a little bit low, certainly a lot lower than I would have expected this evening. But given the performance, I understand why a lot of people maybe kind of just turned everything off this evening. Please don't turn this show off, of course, because you viewers are the reason this thing happens, along with our sponsors, of course. But man alive, we have not seen an offensive performance like this from a Caitlin Clark-led team in a long time. I mentioned they lost to Kansas State a year ago. That was a bit more of a shootout. I don't have the number in front of me. I suppose I can pull that up. That, of course, was played in Manhattan. And let me pull up the final score from last year. The final last year was, let's see if I can find it, 84-83. Okay. Tonight, Iowa doesn't even hit 60 points. And I'd like to know the last time that happened. We don't have our guy Kyle with us. I don't think he's on here. I did not talk to Kyle about jumping on, but Kyle, if you're out there and you have a moment, let me know the last time Iowa didn't score 60 points in any game. Perhaps close to, they were perhaps close against Creighton a couple of years ago in the NCAA tournament, maybe. But even that, I'm not so sure. But man, the stats are almost mind-boggling when you look at the box score for Iowa. And I've trademarked my show and prided myself on the show in telling the truth and speaking my mind, in my opinion, even if it's not always the favorable one or the one that people want to hear. And I'm going to do that again this evening. And I'm going to treat the Iowa women in this regard the same way I would react to the Iowa men in a bad performance from the men. The stats and the box score just absolutely ridiculous and unacceptable this evening. I understand Caitlin Clark is great. Don't get me wrong. I get it. She is generational. She's one of the greatest players to ever play the game. But when you take 32 shots, 16 threes, folks, she took 32 shots. She made 9 of them. She was 2 of 16 from 3. 24 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. And that is precisely why just reading her points, rebounds, and assists do not tell anywhere close to not only the full story, any story at all. She took 32 shots. The next most shot attempts from any Iowa Hawkeye in this game, 6. 6 shots. Hannah Stolke took 6. Sydney Falter took 5. Gabby Marshall took 4. Those are the next highest attempts on the team behind 32 shot attempt Caitlin Clark. Now, you might say, well, Cory, you're just upset because you didn't make them. If she made them, you wouldn't have minded. Go back and watch a week ago when they beat Virginia Tech. I said, 30. I mean, everybody's excited about the 44. Don't get me wrong. And they won that game in large part because she made a lot more than 9 shots on 31 attempts a week ago. But that's not sustainable. And as great as Caitlin Clark has been, that's not how they ran the offense last year. And I know they lost Monica Sonano. And I think tonight we finally started to see the effects of losing Monica Sonano. They were dominated inside by Ayoka Lee. She is a beast. And I mean that very, very complimentary-like. She is really, really, really good. She was missing last year when Iowa played them. Kansas State deserves to be a top 25 team. They will be, assuming they win later this week. They probably will be, even if they were to lose. I don't know who they play next. But 28 minutes tonight for Lee. 22 points, 12 rebounds, no turnovers. And, of course, she plays a lot like Monica Sonano in that she doesn't take many dribbles. It's not like she's putting the ball on the hardwood with an opportunity to give it up. But, man, there were a couple plays, especially in that second half, where Sharon Goodman just got absolutely swallowed down low. I mean, absolutely swallowed. Talk about position. I used to think that Luka Garza was kind of the king of the castle as it relates to swallowing your defender down low. But, man, Lee did it tonight on several occasions. Addie O'Grady played. Let me find the final stats. I get the feeling, without even looking at the minutes total, that Goodman played more than O'Grady. Let me confirm that here. O'Grady with 12 minutes, Goodman with 19. So Goodman's still outpacing O'Grady with minutes. It's amazing. O'Grady's got more size, but the reality is right now, whether it's a confidence thing or maybe there was something else that's going on mentally or physically that I'm not aware of, the bottom line is she plays a lot smaller than she is. And I could say that about Sharon Goodman as well. I just expected Addie to be further along. And she's really struggling right now. She is really struggling right now. She scored a ton of points against DePaul back in Kinnick a month ago. And I've said that before. Tonight she goes 1 for 3 in 12 minutes, 4 boards, 2 points, and 2 fouls. 1 block. And with her size at 6'4", she has got to be, her and Goodman, Sharon, have to be the ladies down low that even if you're not scoring points, you've got to make a statement on the glass. And Sharon did get 8 rebounds. Kudos to her for getting those 8 rebounds. Stolke had 11. But the bottom line is, if you want to play small ball, that's fine. And you're going to be able to get away with that, as we've seen Iowa got away with it against Virginia Tech. Now, I got to go back and watch that game. I mean, again, Clark, this is how good this Iowa team has the potential to be and how good Caitlin Clark is. is Clark played one of the worst games I've ever seen her play tonight, and yet they still had a chance in the final minute of the game against a very good Kansas State team, a team that I think deserves to be ranked in the top 25. But the bottom line is Hannah Stolke is not a big with girth, all right? She's not. Monica Sonano had size, and she had some girth. She was kind of big-boned, if you will. I guess that's the correct way to say that, I guess. I think everybody here knows what I'm talking about. Hannah's just built different, and she still got 12. She still got 11 rebounds, pulled down 11 boards. But, man, they played Stolke and the bigs a lot tonight, and it didn't matter. Final rebounding totals for the game, Iowa won that 47-38. And so, rebounding totals weren't bad when you look at it from that respect. But, boy, defensively, just got swallowed down low too many times. Very efficient night for Ayoka Lee. 9 of 14, 22 points, and 12 rebounds. That was basically the story of the game. Gabby Gregory was very quiet. She went off last year. Very quiet tonight. And she's been quiet all season so far. I'm looking at her totals for the year. She had 7 points tonight on 3 of 12 shooting. I mean, heck, Serena Sundell went... It's not like Kansas State lit the nets on fire. She went 3 of 10. Glenn went 1 of 3. The other Glenn went 1 of 3. Walker went 5 of 10 off the bench. That hurt them. She hurt them. 12 points for Walker. But, man, nobody else for Iowa. I shouldn't say that. One other person in double figures, and it was a very efficient night for Molly Davis. 3 of 3 from the field. I thought she was going to be the difference. Iowa got up by, 5 to 7 points there in the fourth quarter, but it didn't matter. Just could not make shots down the stretch. It's incredible. And the fact of the matter, well, let's move on. We'll get to our callers, and then I can rant some more. I know people are probably tired of me doing that. So let's go to our call-in line. Let's first go to, by the way, Iowa Smokehouse is sponsoring our call-in line. We appreciate Iowa Smokehouse for doing that, making our phone calls, our callers, a part of the show. And actually, before we get to our first caller, why don't we acknowledge our RTI Threads player of the game? And it is Molly Davis. I thought she was really good down the stretch. Like I said, that number is not accurate. 6 of 6. She was 3 of 3 from the field. Let's correct that. She was 3 of 3 from the field. But again, 10 points for Molly. And, we saw her ability to score when she was at Central Michigan. I know this is a different type of game in the Big Ten, and certainly crossing over here into the Big 12 tonight. But she made some really tough floaters when she was called upon, needed. And I thought she was really good. You just cannot possibly. She was 4 or 5 from the free throw line as well. You just cannot possibly expect a team that has one player that puts up 32 attempts and the next closest with 6 attempts. You cannot expect that team to be elite. You can't. You cannot. That's not what happened last year. I don't know how many shot attempts Caitlin averaged, but she's already got 2 games this year with 31 attempts or more. All right, and arguably against the 2 best teams they've played. No, not arguably. The 2 best teams they've played. Virginia Tech and Kansas State. They were fortunate enough to win the first, but that's not a recipe for success. I don't care how good Caitlin Clark is. To me, that is not a recipe for success. Let's go back to our call-in line. We'll go to our first Smokehouse caller of the day. James is on the line. James, welcome.
How you doing?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
Good. This is the one reason why they went after transfer portal big. I feel like for games like this, obviously they didn't land it right, but they were in on Mara, they were in on Lauren Betts, whatever. Like this shows you the reason why they needed to get it big in the portal. I feel like a game like this,
And they
where
didn't.
it's like, I know, but I'm saying that's why they needed to. I'm saying that's what's going to hurt us in the long run because that's why they needed to, because it's going to hurt us in the long run because we just
Correct.
don't have the big. If we play a team with a good big, we're going to be no offense to Goodman, Grady. I know they're trying their best, but like,
hold on a second. Let's quantify this, James, because I think you're right in some respects.
Virginia
But
Tech does have a good big. Yeah, you're not wrong. Virginia Tech does have a good big. So
Virginia Tech. Let's not forget. I'm going to go back to that game because you watched that game just like I did last week. But what was the difference with that the Thursday game last week and the game tonight with those bigs?
I feel like the one didn't look to score as much as this one did. The Kim, whatever her name is, Kim.
Well, Kitley's 6'6",
Kitley.
but she does not see. And this is my novice way of looking at this. She does not have the all around size, the girth, so to speak.
Yeah.
They don't list the
She's
women's
like just
basketball
more
player.
long and lanky than she is like
Correct. And that's Hannah Stolke, right? Even though
yeah.
Hannah's not 6'6", but I don't think height was the issue. I think when she's getting, and we saw this with Goodman and with O'Grady, especially with Goodman there late in the fourth quarter, when you're getting bumped off your spot over and over and again, that tells me it's more of a strength problem and a center of gravity problem than simply height. It wasn't a height problem. When you're getting swallowed under the basket, I mean, Garza was 6'11", but if you can be 7'3". If he swallows you under the basket, he's going to have an easy layup. Remember what he did to Hunter Dickinson when he went off for like 40 up there?
Yeah, it's all about a lot of that too is all about footwork as well too. You know, like how good your footwork is too. Sometimes you can just get past it like
Oh,
that too.
yeah.
But that's one thing that's gonna hurt us a
And right
lot.
now, besides Stolke, Iowa does not have bigs with very good footwork,
Yeah,
in my opinion.
and that's see. I know people earlier were like, oh, it's not a big deal because we got Stocky, and I was trying to tell people like that's not your answer at the five. Like that's not your answer to five.
But
Like no,
it can be in certain games, it can.
it can be, but like when you're trying to win a national championship, when you're trying to do all that stuff, I don't think that's your answer. If that makes sense, like. I don't think it gives you enough to do what you need to do in the long run to win a national championship or get back
Well,
to that point.
again, not to beat a dead horse, James. You're absolutely right about that. But look back at the score; they only gave up 65 points. Ultimately, they
They
lost
could
this
get
game.
some offense. Yeah, if they could get some offense going, they would have won. And it also seems weird. I only caught the second half because I was at practice, but like from what I've seen from the first half, watching it back, like in commercials and stuff, it seemed like if we can't shoot, we're screwed because everybody knows who the ball's going to late in the game. You know what I mean? Like if you watch it, they knew Caitlin was getting the ball late in the game, so they're just doubling her on the inbounds, or they're just doubling her when she catches it. It's like they know that's where the ball's going. So like it's gonna be hard to win games unless she makes a miraculous shot sometimes because that's they. You know where the ball's going. I know where the ball's going. I think everybody in this chat room knows where the ball's going.
Well, I was honestly, I mean, down the stretch, the last couple possessions, you're thinking back to previous years, and you're thinking, okay, who do they go to in the final shot? Maybe would be Stolke under some circumstances, but without Monica Sinano, who is the go-to person
I
offensively?
nobody. I feel. I mean, obviously it's Caitlin, but like I feel like the way Molly was shooting, maybe it gave her a chance late in the game just because like I feel like she was a little bit. She had a little bit going, and Caitlin didn't seem to have as much going.
She's just so undersized, James.
Yeah, I understand you in that point, but I'm saying like she was going a little bit, so
Yeah, she was. I wouldn't
and
have minded,
Caitlin,
if they could have drawn up something. You're obviously going for the three there down the stretch, but if they could have figured out a way to get Molly, with some dribble drive penetration, I would have been fine with that.
yeah, for sure. What's your thoughts on Goodman when she got the rebound and she didn't even shoot it? Like you could have shot it and then fouled and try to play that game. Instead, she tried to look for the three, then had to take the timeout because she couldn't get the three.
Well,
When she got the rebound on the three.
yeah, be quite honest, I don't really feel comfortable with Goodman shooting almost ever. Maybe that's being unfair to Sharon Goodman. I just haven't seen enough offensively from her. Um, close games. The issue that's Iowa's facing, that they face tonight, they're going to continue to face, is in close games, especially when Caitlin's not shooting great. But in close games, I mean, a defense can just hone in on her. And right now, Gabby Marshall ain't shooting. I mean, she's not doing anything right now. I
But
mean, I know she gives you defense under, in some games. She is not giving them anything offensively. That's a problem. That's part of the problem right now. So they lose Monica Sonano in the offseason. You bring back Molly Davis. You bring back Gabby Marshall. And Molly did her part tonight. I mean, I don't think you can expect a whole lot more, although I'd love to see her get more than 3 attempts, maybe be a little bit more assertive. And I don't blame her for that. They just run everything through Caitlin. But then you look at Gabby Marshall, 1 of 4, 0 of 1 from 3, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 points, and a turnover. I mean, what are we doing out there? She had 24 minutes.
and I feel like one thing I do feel like Molly played better, and maybe this is just me. I don't know if you see it as well too. Maybe her coming off the bench gives her a little bit more like not confidence, but like she seems to play better off the bench than she does in the starting lineup. Like last year, I felt like She has some of her better games, and like when she was starting, she didn't seem like she played with this kind of intensity that she did today. I feel like if that makes sense. Like the first game she came off the bench, she kind of played. If she actually played better off the bench today than she has the first 3 games as a starter.
Yeah. You could be right on that. You maybe that was something to do with why she played better tonight, but they got to figure out some way to get Kate Martin and Gabby Marshall involved because neither of those ladies are really giving them much of anything right now. Kate Martin for the game had 0 points, 0 of 3 from the field, 0 of 2 from 3. They can't make threes right now. That's what's incredible. This
Yeah,
team has, we've ignored it to an extent because they were 3-0, but they can't make threes. They were 2 of 21 tonight. And you'd expect eventually that light's going to click on. It's not like they didn't have good looks tonight. They had some good looks. Now, I give Kansas State credit defensively. They're really good defensively. And they make it hard on Caitlin. They get up in her stuff. They get physical with her. I've always thought that's a way to play Caitlin Clark. And she missed shots tonight that she wouldn't normally miss, but you've got to do that to her, right? You got to try to get her off her spot. And as opposed to last year, they do not have that safety blanket down low like they had with Monica Sonano. I like Hannah Stolke, but in a game like this, they just don't have that typical weapon. James, I gotta let you slide, but
yeah,
appreciate you, sir, and we'll probably talk to you tomorrow after football.
yeah. You mean after the? You said
All
after
right,
football, after the basketball game.
basketball every
Yeah,
day is
yeah.
a game show, so we'll talk to you
Yeah.
tomorrow.
All right, talk to you later.
Thank you, sir. All right, super chat here from Doug. The women will probably see this team again next week in the Gulf Coast Tournament Finals or North Carolina. Yes, I forgot about that, Doug. Haven't looked at that field recently. I knew North Carolina was in the field. I guess I do remember now. Kansas State's in the field as well. I don't know that I want to see them again because 2 times is enough in the last 2 seasons, and they seem to know how to play Iowa. Iowa just does not match up very well with them. And I think there was a difference. I mean, again, last year, they somehow matched up poorly against Kansas State, even without Lee and with Sonano. This year, they match up poorly with Lee, without Sonano. So I don't know what the solution is. I'd like to hear what Lisa Bluter had to say as far as what makes Kansas State so difficult to score on. Let's go back to, let's add Kyle here. Kyle, you jumped on with us. We appreciate that. You were sending me some frustrated DMs during the game. Was I being fair with my early assessment as it relates to 32 shots? I think you agree with that. 32 shots when you're not shooting well is a lot, and 24 points on 32 attempts. I'm not going to praise that any day of the week. The fact of the matter is, this is a college basketball game, not an NBA game, and 6 attempts is the second most attempts for anybody else on this roster tonight. That's insane. That is an insane number.
That you compare it to an NBA game. That wasn't an NBA box score. That was an AAU box score. That was an AAU box score with a Division I player and a bunch of nobodies around him. That's what happens in high school games or AAU games. I mean, I struggle to believe that these girls have gotten to the Division I level in college basketball and have told themselves at this point that Caitlin's just so good that they're not going to shoot. Like I don't know. I don't know if it was coaching, if it's just Caitlin's presence or something, but I that it leaves me speechless because I have never seen a box score like that in any level of basketball with any team. I mean, she had more shot attempts than the whole rest of the team.
I know. Or combined. What was the combined shot attempts for everyone else?
The rest of the team had 29 combined shot attempts. She had 32.
Yeah.
And she took 16 3-pointers. The rest of the team took 5.
So I guess this would be a better question, I guess, for probably a former D1 player or a coach. But what I want to know, Kyle, is how do you approach this? Because some people would just say, well, she's so great, she's just got to keep shooting, and down the stretch, you give her the ball. But at what point do you say, all right, we got to change things up a little bit? To me, I look at the stat line tonight. And you know what I say? I say that's a kind of a coaching failure tonight.
Absolutely. When people don't get the ball where they need to get the ball, it's on one of 2 people. It's on your point guard or your head coach. And I know it doesn't matter if your point guard is Caitlin Clark or if your point guard is Rajon Rondo, who's not looking to shoot first. Those are the people that are in charge of getting people the looks that they're supposed to get. And when those people don't get those looks, I mean, to me, it's Lisa Bluter. There's got to be an element of coaching in it because, like, with 10 seconds left, Hannah Stolke gets an offensive rebound, and her thought is not to go up for a layup. Her thought is to turn around and throw it 180 degrees back out for a three. And I understand 3 to tie, but I guarantee you, watching plays like that, people like Gary Close are pulling their hair out because those people preach take the easy 2 with 10 to 15 seconds left. If there's 5 seconds left, I understand throwing it out. But like her thought was, first of all, don't take the layup, go for the 3. But then her second thought was, not only do we need a 3, we need a Caitlin Clark 3.
Well, who else is going to make 3? I mean, right now, who else is making 3s?
Yeah, nobody.
That's the problem. They don't have anybody else that, even when they have shot, nobody's making 3s. And Sydney Falter passed open a wide open shot in that second half today from 3.
What does that do? What does that do to a defense when they see multiple other starters except for one player on the other team that routinely just pass up good looks?
Hannah Stolke passed up a 3-pointer in the second half, and she's made a couple this year.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what the solution is other than they got to figure out a way defensively they didn't get in transition tonight. And I think that's what Kansas State did best is they obviously when you're not scoring, it can be hard to keep a team from getting out in transition, but not the case tonight. This is an Iowa team that wants to play up and down. I'm waiting for the official box score from Iowa, but I don't know if they had more than I don't think they had 10 fast break points out of their 58. No. Absolutely not. I don't think so. That's
maybe 6
failure for an Iowa team. Real quick, I want to get to do you have time to stick around for a couple minutes, Kyle? We're going to jump to a couple of calls here, but I do want to make a point of kind of a bad week for Iowa fans. You know, Iowa, the men go on the road, lose to Creighton. Iowa fans get news of Cooper DeJean's injury. And I feel really bad for Cooper. I've been promoting his apparel and his merchandise over at his RTI Threads website. Definitely urge you to support him because I know everybody thinks he's going to be great at the next level, and he is going to be. But he's got to be the lowest of lows right now. A young guy who was hoping to lead this team through to the Big Ten championship game, and now his season has been cut short. Visit cd3lacesup.com to check out the CD3 Laces Up apparel, and who knows, folks, maybe you throw enough NIL purchases at him, he'll do something different than what people think he's going to do next year. So we'll see on that. But anyways, RTI Threads and cd3lacesup.com. RTI Threads website is rtithreads.com. They got Aaron Graves' line and a bunch of young guys. They're also working with some baseball people. Those lines will be released soon as well. So lots of good things coming up from our sponsor, RTI Threads. Let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. And we will add in Scott to the show. Whoa, Scott is blurry. And what is going on?
Yep, I don't know. Is it better? Or is
it's a little blurry? There you go, Scott. You're much better.
All right. So, yeah, I had called in last week after the Virginia Tech game. One thing I said I was concerned about when Caitlin scored 44 points. Man, this is not sustainable. The rest of the team has to help.
You were right about that.
Of course, I was expecting the fatigue was going to happen later in the mid-season, but I think even the commentators mentioned it. But her shots were short. I mean, it looked like she was fatigued. Now that could have been like Kansas State defense was just pushing her.
And can I just say something else real quick, Scott? Because I am usually very, very complimentary of Iowa women's basketball. Like, I very rarely say negative things about the team, but every game deserves its fair criticism. I'll tell you one thing that I absolutely hate, and I don't care if it's Iowa or any other team, when a player doesn't like a call and instead of running back down the court, he or she decides to stop and either put his or her head down or just make a comment to the officials while the team's going 4-on-5 the other way. That's just stupid.
Yep.
It's just stupid basketball.
Yeah. And even Caitlin Clark does that.
Caitlin Clark does it. Caitlin Clark does it. Yep. Patrick McCaffrey sometimes does it. Connor was really bad about doing it. and these are perceived to be leaders on the team. I don't like it. I don't think it's good
Can
leadership.
I ask you a question, Cory?
Doncic does it all the time too, but I like Luka gets away with it, and he's fabulous, but it still irritates the heck out of me.
How many times have you ever seen an official change a call because a player complains while the other team's running a fast break?
Never.
The only benefit of the doubt I can give the player in that situation is they're hoping they can convince the official of a makeup call on the other end. I don't know.
Yeah.
I saw a couple of really questionable calls tonight. I saw really questionable calls the other night in Omaha. That's part of officiating, especially part of it seems like Big Ten college basketball officiating anymore, is there seems to be a divide. Now, maybe I'm just noticing it more because I'm involved with it more now than ever, but that's beside the fact. You just got to run back. Just run back. I'm just tired of that. And at the end of the game, I think it was a 5-point. Yeah, it was a 5. It was 63-58. Caitlin missed the last 3. And how much time was there left? Like 8 seconds?
Yeah.
But what did Caitlin do when she missed the 3? She stopped playing. She was done. She missed the 3, and she just stood there and started walking off the court. See, that doesn't get. I love Caitlin Clark. I don't love that. To me, 8 seconds, and some people are going to say, "Who cares? The game is over." 8 seconds. First of all, you don't just turn around and walk off. I know you're upset. I get it. Go right after the ball, and I don't have any problem with Kansas State laying it up there at the end when they're only up 5. Don't have an issue with it. But anyways, that comes down to coaching and it comes down to leadership. So hopefully these girls have been resilient the last couple of years, and they lost this game a year ago under much different circumstances, but they're going to need a similar bounce back because I do think you texted me, Kyle, you said they have problems. I agree with you. I do think they have problems. And I think we ignored some of the problems first few games because they hadn't had a matchup like this against a true big center. And, I don't know. I'm not combing through the Big Ten rosters to see what these different gals are like, but based upon last year in the Big Ten, I'd say at least half the Big Ten teams have a big body center. Probably not as good as Lee more often than not, but I'll tell you, it'd be interesting if they play Kansas State here again next week. That will be very interesting.
Where would that game take place? Do we know where's the tournament located?
I believe it's in Florida, isn't it?
Okay.
Isn't it in Florida, Scott?
There was like a chat that said North Carolina, the one that you read.
That's the team. That's the other team.
Yeah, I think North Carolina is in the same tournament. Let me pull it up here.
Oh, because I thought the chat or somebody had mentioned that it was in North Carolina, but it could be Florida. I don't actually know.
Okay, so they are playing that tournament down in Estero, Florida. I don't even know where Estero is, and it's a Flow Hoops tournament. So how many people are actually going to buy Flow Hoops? Man, I guess if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be Iowa women's basketball fans. But they have an interesting tournament down there. They get Purdue, Fort Wayne, and they get either Delaware or Florida Gulf Coast. Florida Gulf Coast is a good program. But all of a sudden, we were talking last week, Kyle, about how they don't really have many people left in the schedule. Now it's like
nobody.
They just lost to Kansas State. Now they might play them again. Florida Gulf Coast isn't a guarantee. I don't know what their roster looks like, but in basketball's a long season. You can't push the panic button, but there are definitely questions to answer. Scott?
But did it seem like the team was like really tired tonight? Like they didn't have any energy. But anyway, you had asked, when was the last time Iowa girls scored less than 60 points? The Creighton game 2 years ago, they scored 62. And before that, it was Baylor in 2019. They scored 53 when they got blown out. They
scored 59 against Maryland, I think it was.
In 2020.
In 2020, yeah, it was. They scored 59 against Maryland towards the end of the 2020 season, right before the COVID.
You're right to bring that up, Scott, because think about that. That's 3 years ago, almost 4 years ago.
That's 100 basketball games ago.
Yeah, that's insane. I mean, when's the last time you could say about any Iowa women's game men's? The men is not been as extreme in that regard. When's the last time you could say about an Iowa women's basketball team that the defense outplayed the offense? I don't think the defense was great today, but it outplayed the offense.
I think Kansas State didn't. They shot the ball badly. I mean, they probably not as bad as. I mean, I thought Kansas State's defense was actually not bad. It was Say
Oh, it
how
was
many
good.
of our girls.
And to add to that, Cory, too, as well, not only did the defense do their part, the rebounding did their part, too. They out-rebounded them by 9.
Yeah,
That's a worse
surprised
weakness to
by
me than
that.
the defense.
Yeah, I just think offensively, they got a lot of questions to answer, and I didn't think I'd be saying that. But it's going to be, depending on matchups, it's going to be a seesaw type of year if they can't figure out what to do with the 5. And, teams continue to get up in Caitlin's space. And in the past, Caitlin has been able to battle through that. I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. She's great. I'm sure she'll battle through that and bounce back. But I still agree with you, Kyle. 31, 32 shot attempts is just too many regardless. And that's not sustainable. Like you said, Scott, too long of a season to rely on that. And once you get to tournament play, you're just playing with fire if you're that reliant on one player.
I was disappointed that Goodman for a big. I don't know. Is Hannah supposed to be a natural 5 or is she supposed to be a 4?
She's
I
more
think 4. Okay, because I think she's way better than that Goodman. That Goodman he can't shoot the ball. I swear I heard somebody say that she's really good at catching the ball and shooting it, and I haven't seen that in the 2 or 3 games that I saw. So, but the rest of the players.
Kyle, is this bad that we got 3 guys on here talking about women's basketball? Are we going to be accused of mansplaining?
I don't know.
I'm not trying to seem overly critical. I'm just being objective.
Well, I remember I looked through the comments last time when I was on, and there's somebody said something about me being too hard on Caitlin Clark, and I'm like, I'm hard on her because I have such respect for her. If I didn't have respect for her, I would not be hard on her. This is like I'm looking at her box scores and I'm comparing them to a Steph Curry box score. That's the point that we're at with her. That's why we talk like this.
And
right.
We're all just as critical of the men as well.
Absolutely.
I'm more
men's basketball or that in football. So hey, they want to be number 2 in the country or they want to get to the Final Four. It comes with scrutiny, and they have said in the past that they accept that. So, but anyway, I'll let you go.
Well, appreciate the call, Scott, and hopefully we'll talk to you after an Iowa men's win tomorrow.
Yep, definitely.
Thank you, sir. All right. David here in the chat brings up some stats. Let me read through some stats. If people are just joining us, I'll give you some team stats to break down, and then we'll go through some box score stats, and some of these are really mind-boggling. Iowa was 22 of 61. That's good for 36% from the field in the night. 2 of 31 from 3. That's good for 9.5% from behind the three-point arc. 12 of 18 from the free throw line, good for 67%. They out-rebounded the Wildcats 47-38. Turn the ball over 16 times. There's another category that we haven't talked about. This team turns the ball over way too much. And, I understand they play up and down, but and it's hard to be critical of a team that just came off a national championship run, or I should say a national championship game run. But I compare how fast the men play, and I'll give Fran credit for this. His teams value the ball better than Lisa Bluter's teams.
They play a lot cleaner basketball.
They absolutely do. And 16 turnovers is too many. Lost that category. They were -7 in turnovers tonight. Looked like Iowa was going to push forward, especially with that 6-point lead late, and then just went through another spell of not being able to hit shots. And I mentioned Caitlin Clark, 24 points, 9 of 32 from the field. I don't even have the stats up on the bottom ticker. I don't know that anybody wants to see those. 2 of 16 from 3. Hannah Stolke was 4 of 6 from the field, 9 points. Sydney Falter, 2 of 5 with 5 points. Stolke did add in 11 rebounds, a Falter with 4. Marshall, 2 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 of 4 from the field, 0 of 1 from 3. Kate Martin was 0 of 2 from 3, 0 of 3 from the field. 0 points for Kate Martin, 8 rebounds. That you cannot have that.
No,
you
absolutely
cannot
not.
have anything like that in your super senior guard.
From somebody that's played as many games as her. And the other thing too is on a night where Caitlin Clark is struggling, there may be some younger players or players that are not as sure of themselves that, it's really Caitlin's job to get in the huddle, or Lisa Bluter's job to get in the huddle and say, look, I don't want to say that Caitlin doesn't have it, but to a degree she didn't have it tonight. Go, do your thing. There's some players that need to be told that, and Kate Martin shouldn't be one of those players at this point in her career. She should be she should be able to recognize this. 3 quarters into the game, Caitlin doesn't have it. I need to go.
I'm not there. I'm not on the sideline, and I'm certainly not a coach. But one thing that I would ask if I was there, and I'm not there. I can't answer this question to Lisa Bluter. Would love to get Lisa on at some point. But I look at the numbers, and I wonder if she wishes she had played Kylie Feuerbach more minutes. 5 minutes tonight for Kylie, 0.02 from the field.
Absolutely.
I mean, at what point do you say, hey, this young lady hit a couple of big shots against Virginia Tech a week ago and is coming off an injury, but we talk about how highly recruited she was, highly regarded she was at a high school. She's got some moves on offensively. She can knock down shots, but you're not going to get any rhythm in 5 minutes. So I wonder if that's not a regret when they look back at the stat sheet. Molly Davis, again, 10 points, 3 of 3 from the field. She's our player of the game, our RTI Threads player of the game. Then Goodman added 6 points, 8 rebounds, 2 of 3 from the field. O'Grady, 2 points, 1 of 3 from the field, 4 rebounds. The point is, the true fives in this team took 6 total shots. Think about the production you were getting from Monica Sonano a year ago. So it's incredible on a couple of levels. I go back to the offseason, and I know James brought this up. Iowa tried to go to the transfer portal and tried to find a big. Could not. Don't know if you put the blame on anybody other than it just happens. And with NIL, it's hard to land the big fish when you have people like LSU calling. But missed opportunity with a generational talent like Caitlin Clark. Maybe they overcome this, but I don't know where they make up for that size that Monica Sonano gave them.
Yeah, it's going to be a battle, and I mean, there's just at this point there's such a drop off because Stokey didn't play a terrible game tonight, but again, when she comes off the floor, because she does have to come off the floor at some point, there's such a drop off. I mean, I don't know. It's there's not the same trust that we had last year when Sonano came off the floor and Stokey went on. We had a lot more confidence in her last year than we do the backups this year.
And real quick, the Hawkeye basketball fan, appreciate you being here in the chat, but I want to clear something up. Kyle mentioned how we're talking about Caitlin Clark, and it's a sliding scale here, and we're evaluating her relative to what our expectations are for her, and the expectations that she has set. And I'm evaluating the team based on the expectations that the team has set. If we're talking about this team going back to the Final Four this year, then this criticism is absolutely valid. Now, what you just said in the chat, Hawkeyes are still going to have a good season. Well, if a good season is top 3 finish in the Big Ten, maybe a run, maybe you win the Big Ten tournament, and then you get to the Sweet 16, then yeah, this team could probably do that. Absolutely. Caitlin Clark is that good. Like, no offense to the girls around her, but there's not many teams out there that Caitlin Clark couldn't get to the NCAA tournament and probably win a game or two. I mean, it's crazy once you get there. You never know what can happen, but we're talking about national expectations, making a run to potentially the Final Four or maybe even a national championship. So that's the criticism. That's where the criticism comes from. Let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Ryan says, I love that voice. So what does that mean?
Your mocking voice is awesome.
I made a mocking voice? Who did I mock?
You know what I'm talking about, Cory.
Ryan says, can Brad Van Meter hit the 3-point shot?
Hey, we could have used him.
I'll ask Brad. Next time I talk to him, I'll ask Brad if he can hit the 3. Notice I'm wearing the State Farm. Normally I can't wear red on postgame shows because over half the teams in the Big Ten are red. But when you're playing the purple people eaters, you can wear red. So anyways, go ahead, Mr. Ryan.
Looks good on you. Anyway, lousy, rotten night, gentlemen. Where do you start? What I kept feeling through the game, I mean, in that I of course, like I'm sure you and Kyle and everyone else were expecting us to start to put the afterburners on a little bit and start pulling away in the third, and it didn't happen. And then early, maybe 2-3 minutes into the fourth, it just kind of started to become apparent it wasn't our night. One thing that we haven't said a lot about tonight that I think probably should be mentioned is I don't think it was a real good night for Lisa Bluter from a coaching standpoint. Case in point, we're down 4, I believe, with 29 seconds to go. a great time to call a timeout, draw a play, go for a 2. Instead, Caitlin taking a shot from the beak, as they said, and then the off-balance air ball after that. We still had opportunities to extend the game a little bit. They couldn't shoot free throws. K-State couldn't shoot free throws, so get it to. Caitlin's awesome at driving. We have get it into Hannah for a 2 and foul. Let them brick another free throw and go for overtime if you have to. I mean, it was, a lot of times with the men in years past, this has been my common complaint. I'd say, you're taking these cockamamie threes when, just some organized offensive basketball will suffice. And I think ultimately that's what sunk us. We shouldn't have to rely on Caitlin shooting 50% and scoring 40 points to necessarily win. People like Gabby, she's got to re-find her stroke. She temporarily found it in Cedar Falls. She's got to find that again. I thought Molly Davis did a good job.
Real quick, made 5 threes against you. I talked about how Gabby's been struggling. She has. Go back 3 of the 4 games she has shot poorly, but she flashed against you and I. But that's the problem as a super senior. You can't be that flashy. You can't be that up and down. And that's why, I'll tell you this, that is why that's part of the big reason I've been so, I don't want to say negative, but very skeptical of the Iowa men. Because preseason, who was everybody tabbing as the next great one on this Iowa basketball roster?
Peyton Sanford. He
went like 3 months to start the season last year where he couldn't make nothing. And he has been the epitome of streaky. Now, maybe he's been okay so far. He got in foul trouble on Tuesday. And he's been okay. But Tony Perkins has been streaky. Gabby Marshall has also been the epitome of streaky. And she got hot at the right time last March. But man, 3 of 4 games she has struggled from 3. And she's had looks. And a lot of her shots aren't even, they're not even on target. I mean, they're not even lined up correctly. So I don't know what's going on with her, but I would encourage her to keep shooting because somebody else has got to take shots.
Well, yeah, I think part of Lisa's job is to take this game and realize that while, the sun will always rise and set with Caitlin, not even Michael Jordan is going to win by Michael Jordan alone. You got to have a supporting cast. Hannah's got a lot of talent. I'm a little surprised you're not seeing more of O'Grady, but boy, I'll tell you what, in that Virginia Tech game, I thought Kylie Freebach was really good. So 5 minutes tonight, that's inexplicable. Really.
It's strange.
Inexplicable. I thought the rotation stunk. I thought Bluter had a bad game, I thought, tonight. Sure, I'll be the first one to say she's a awesome Hall of Fame caliber coach, no question about it. And yes, a coach looks worse when you can't shoot the broadside of a barn. I get it. But when I think Fran is poor at this as well, identifying early enough in the game while there's still time to make adjustments to say, you know what, the three's just not there today. How else can I score via the 2? Or go in for a layup, maybe you get fouled in an and 1. There are other ways than the 3-point shot to score. And it was basically relying on the 3 that ultimately sunk us tonight, I believe. And it's just tough.
Real quick, you're going to get ripped for being critical of Lisa Bluter. You're going to get ripped in the chat by some people, Ryan. You realize that, right?
I don't give 2 rips. I mean, hey, you know what? I love her. She's a great coach.
Hey.
But truth hurts. Hey, you know what? People, there's people who think Kirk Ferentz walks on water too, and he's a great coach. But guess what? He's got a few flaws himself, and we all do. There's not very many perfect coaches, and all I'm really saying is tonight was absolutely an off night for Bluter because I don't think she organized the offense. You don't have to score 90. We could have efficiently won this game ugly, if you will, scoring 70 by more set plays, trying to get easier shots. The 3-point shot is still the lowest percent shot in college basketball. As good as Caitlin and some others are at it, tonight was absolutely not the night. Now, maybe Caitlin wasn't feeling well. That's always a possibility, and it's an anomaly. I have no doubt. I think our money is that she's going to come back stronger. Today
Real quick,
is
why
what
do
it is.
people assume? Why do people assume that she's not feeling well? Is there a rumor out there that I haven't heard?
I'm just saying it's possible. She looked more fatigued than normal, I thought. I'm not the only one who kind of felt that during the game. I have no idea, and I'm not making excuses. She had one of her poorer games as a Hawkeye. It's good for her. You still get 24, and we're talking about how she had a relatively poor game.
Well, she took 32 shots.
And Peyton Sanford, how many points would have he scored early on last year, taking 32 shots? I mean,
that's what I'm saying. I mean, she's a great player, but 32 shots.
Well, and if 16 of them went down, we're, having a way different conversation. I do agree with all of you, though, that there has to be a little more relative balance. When 6 shots is the second most on the team, I think that just simply speaks to my point. Bluter did not do much as far as coaching the offense. It was very much run around and throw up a shot, and as long as it's Caitlin taking it, you live with it, I suppose. But
I think
she's entitled to a bad off shooting game herself, right? And it cost us.
Aesthetic Girl's correct. Defense was not the problem. Stagnant offense with no player movement was the bigger problem. And Kyle, you alluded earlier to somebody else has got to step up and be willing to take shots. So who does that fall on? I think it falls on not only those other players. I think it falls on Caitlin Clark as the point guard and someone who's supposed to be the distributor. When she took 32 shots, and you pair that with the fact that she only had, she 32 shots and 3 assists. She got the ball in her hand all night. 3 assists, but it would make sense because, like you said, nobody else on the team.
Nobody made any shots. Yeah.
No one really tried.
It was, I mean, honest to goodness, it was like watching, I don't know if you remember a few years ago, Cory, watching in the Western Conference Finals, watching the Rockets play with James Harden. I mean, you got 4 people standing corner, wing, and you got James Harden, dribble, step back 3. Like, that's what it was like watching that again. I mean, it was just so, I mean, for a team that plays such beautiful basketball 90% of the time, it was ugly.
Speaking of ugly, any thoughts for Saturday?
Why do you think that's going to be ugly? I know your friend Brett Bielema is going to be there, and I have a lot
well, I'm going to be there too, and I got some major concerns because, I'm sure a lot of us going to the game want to have dinner afterwards, and I don't know, the food may be all gone by then. But a funny thing, just today, I watched a little bit of 1991 Ohio State, Iowa. This is the game at Columbus right after the Gang Lou shooting, the day after. And Iowa, of course, won 16-9 with a 61-yard touchdown by Alan Cross. What was funny about that is early in the game when they were listing our starters on defense, number 91, nose tackle, Brett Bielema, 236 pounds. And I'm like, what? I think he gained a pound or 2 since those days. 236. He was the smallest guy on the line. Can you believe that?
Brett's a big guy.
He was small then. That's my point. I think he's been hitting Shakey's buffets a little too much. Anyway, back to the game.
Yeah, real quick. So let me just say this. I said this to Kyle yesterday. We're not going to move over to football, but I will comment on it because you brought it up. I feel confident in Iowa's ability to beat Illinois. I don't think that it's time to push the panic button. I do think certainly that you can't question it. When your best player goes down, your chances of beating a great team go down. But I think they'll still make it to the Big Ten championship game. All they've got to do is win one of these next 2 games, and I think they'll win on Saturday. I think Iowa's just a better team.
It scares me a little bit that their backup quarterback had 500 yards, though. And, of course, he's not starting. But if things don't go well for Altmaier, I doubt Bielema will hesitate.
It's against
the mighty Indiana defense. But to be
well,
fair,
500 against them is still it's. I mean, you know what? You can move the ball on Iowa's defense too.
Minnesota's defense.
You just can't score.
Minnesota's defense is garbage too, Kyle. Garbage.
Not Indiana garbage.
It's
they're about when I checked for our stream, they were like 63rd in the country or 60th.
Going up against the Big Ten West offenses.
I know you're not gonna. I know you're not gonna give us a score prediction because you have your process for that. I'm obviously not going to be able to talk to you after the game, so I'm going to go 17-13 Hawkeyes. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's, I hope that last week isn't as much of an anomaly on offense. Losing to Gene just was really demoralizing. He's the most exciting player we've had, in my opinion, since Tim Dwight when I was in college. And I think smart money's on that. He's played his last game for Iowa, and that's unfortunate.
We'll see. Ryan, I appreciate you calling in, sir.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yep, we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Bye.
Kai Hawaii says, come on, Iowa just missed shots. That can't be the norm. Of course, we want Kansas State again. They're not a bad team. They had an off night. Get over it. Shaking my head. Well, I don't want Kansas State again simply because I don't think they match up very well with Kansas State. And they've lost 2 games in a row against Kansas State. Now, I'm sure they want Kansas State back. The competitors in them want Kansas State again. And for that, I hope they do from that regard. I'd love to be able to see them go out there and beat them. But they do not match up well with Kansas State. And they match up worse now than they did a year ago. I mean, a year ago, they struggled defensively like they typically did. I mean, they struggled defensively much of last year, but their offense was just so good they overcame it more often than not. That was a night where they couldn't quite do that. Still scored in the 80s, but tonight, just way too much stagnant offensive flow. Really no offensive flow, to be quite frank. And again, the Hawks falling 65-58 to Kansas State. Number to call in, folks. 515-635-1601, 515-635-1601, or you can click the link in the description below. I think I also threw it up in the live chat. So if you want to hop on here the next couple of minutes, we won't stay on much longer. I'd like to get some sleep. Kyle, it's already been an hour. This hour has flown by. What did I miss? Ryan brings up Courtney Green not being on the floor tonight. He was on the floor in Omaha against Creighton the other night, and boy, I tell you, you and I didn't talk since the Creighton game, but we could go on for a long time about that one. But I'm just looking through some of the chats here, and I'm just seeing if I missed anything. Just to look like garbage. I think it's going a little bit far. She's being relied on more than anybody else in the country, and that might be a big flaw for Iowa, but it's also part of the reason why they are so good is because they have a generational player in Caitlin Clark. So there's got to be a balance here. You can't go from one extreme to the other, but you and I both agree 32 shots is too many, 31 shots is too many to be great. They can be really good because she's really good, but they can't be great like that.
Yeah. Did you watch The Last Dance through, just out of curiosity?
I have never watched The Last Dance.
Okay.
I haven't watched any.
So interesting point. Anybody that watched The Last Dance will probably know this. One thing I found interesting was early in Michael Jordan's career, like before Scottie Pippen came, he was the very, very high volume guy that took a ton of shots. We getting a ring?
We are. We're going to put our caller on hold. We'll be right back with you. Go ahead, Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that was really interesting about that documentary was early in his career, he was the guy that jacked up 35 shots a night, scored 40, 45. Team didn't win. They weren't efficient. Then they got Scottie Pippen, and towards the end of Michael Jordan's career, he kind of accomplished everything individually, but he talked about his attitude going into a lot of regular season games. And what he would say is, even though we all think of him as a scorer, and he is a scorer, is he would have said, going into a game against Charlotte or just kind of anybody, he would start the game very casually. He'd play good defense. He wouldn't force a lot of shots. He'd kind of take stock of, hey, this guy's got it going. This guy doesn't have it going. This guy has it going, etc. And then they'd get to the end of the game. If they'd pulled away or they were getting blown out, he would rest. And if it was a close game, that was the moment where, he's only maybe taken 15 shots or 12 shots entering the fourth quarter. Then he has the green light to take over the game. And then he maybe ends the game with 25 shots. I say that all to say, I really think that's something that Caitlin should think about as far as using that first quarter against teams that tonight they were 16.5-point favorites tonight. So matchup or no matchup, Vegas thought this was an easy win for Iowa. Vegas did not think this was going to be a close game. So, she very well could have used that first quarter to, especially as, if what we're seeing is true, and I don't know that there's any truth to it, that she was tired or she was sick or whatever, but especially if she feels that way, she can use that first quarter to distribute the basketball and figure out, does Molly Davis have it going? Does, do any of these girls have it going to the point where, it gets late in the game and I can trust them? She can use the first several minutes of the game to figure that out and not tire herself out to the point where she gets to the fourth quarter. And, as bad as they were tonight, they were up 5 with 2:22 to go in this basketball game, and they didn't score a point for the last 3 minutes. So, that is the moment where up 5, 2:22 to go. I think you and me both, and maybe you disagree with me on this, but that's the moment where I'm more okay with her saying, "Okay, I'm going to take over here." That's the moment where I'm kind of more okay with her running the offense through herself all the time. But she should have. I don't know. I thought she was way too aggressive from the jump, and got to the point where she had nothing left with 2 minutes to go.
Aesthetic Girl brings up how Gabby does not create her own shot, and we've never claimed that she does. And so she is limited with her offensive game. She's become a better defender as her career has grown, as went on. She's not the most athletic, though, and she is undersized, so she's limited. But I think what's brought up here by Pierre in the chat is fair. It is interesting. We don't normally see coaches switching up their starting five as much as we've seen Iowa switching up its starting five. Even going back to the exhibition when Addison O'Grady started, then you had a game, I'm trying to think, game one, I think, against Farley Dickinson. I believe Goodman started alongside Stolke, Clark. Who else would have started in that game? Marshall, and would it have been? It had to have been Kate Martin, right?
Yeah, Kate Martin would have been top 5.
Molly Davis has now been in the mix, starting. I mentioned Goodman, O'Grady. They've just done some mixing and matching, which I just find interesting. We see that in the NBA a lot, but I wonder. I'd like to ask someone who's been able to coach college basketball, and someone like Gary Close, who we're going to get to talk to a lot over the next few months, can probably give us an idea of why that is. But he talks about why it's not as important who starts, it's who finishes, and it's who gets the most minutes. But you do wonder if there's something to be said for chemistry, rhythm out of the gates. And Brandon brought up the fact that Taylor McCabe got 0 minutes tonight. Now, she hasn't been lighting it on fire, but she has been playing. And we didn't see any minutes for her this evening. She'd probably be the one player that I look at and say, why isn't she out there? AJ Edgar, last I knew, was still dinged up. It sounded like she was getting closer. I know she was out of her boot on Sunday against UNI. But, boy, when nobody's making shots, maybe send in someone like Taylor McCabe, who's got a reputation for making threes. And she obviously didn't get any minutes tonight. Tanner says, love Caitlin, truly believe she can make every shot. Sometimes I just wish we tried to give someone else on the team something when Caitlin is taking that many shots and they just aren't falling. Yeah, that's why I go back to coaching. I got a lot of respect for Lisa Bluter, but at some point you've got to direct things, and it almost felt like there was no answer. Like the coaching staff didn't have a solution to the problem. The solution was just keep going, keep shooting. You'll shoot your way out. And sometimes that works, but man, that's a lot of shots to just hope that eventually you work it out. And up until the final minute, she did not.
Yeah, I would have loved to have seen out of any of those timeouts in the second half, or even in the first half, frankly. But out of any of those timeouts, drop a play to get somebody an inbounds play to get someone else a shot, because they're hawking her on those inbounds plays. I mean, looks like, I mean, maybe not literally, but it looks like Caitlin has three people on her on the inbounds play. So I would have loved to have seen. I would love to see moving forward to see them use Caitlin as a decoy early in a game to get somebody a look, because you don't know. I mean, one shot can lead to 2 or 3 or 4. You just don't know until you call plays for other people.
Michael says that Stolke's out of control, needs an athletic player with skills who's under control. I would disagree with that. I think Hannah Stolke is very skilled. The problem is she isn't a true 5. I mean, that's what I would attribute a lot of this to. And, you know, again, without going back and looking at this thing on tape, defensively, what did Kansas State do differently than, what Virginia Tech did a week ago? The one big thing that I can point to is they kept Iowa out of transition, and that's with a lot more misses than Virginia Tech had a week ago. So that would be the one thing I look at and say, well, that's where it starts, disrupting Iowa's pace of play. And we find the comment here from William. In the warm-ups, he says that Caitlin Clark was having trouble warming her hands, maybe some flu. I mean, we don't know. Maybe that's the case. I'm sure maybe that's out there from someone post-game. I'm guessing Lisa maybe was asked that question if she was feeling okay this evening, but we won't know, I guess, until we get off the show.
And even if that is the case, and I'll give her the benefit of the doubt, maybe she wasn't feeling great, but that's still, I mean, there's still onus on her and Lisa Bluter to tell the rest of the girls, hey, Caitlin's not feeling great tonight. You guys need to step up. I mean, there's still, Iowa's should be a good enough team that they could still manage that.
Well, that's the scary thing, is if somehow she was dealing with some sort of flu or something, what the way that Iowa dealt with that situation is give her 32 shots.
Force feed her the ball.
Rest her 3 minutes and give her 32 shots. I mean, that doesn't seem like a game plan for a player who's dealing with injuries, or injuries or illness,
sickness, whatever it is. Yeah.
Okay. Before we get to going to give our final stats, last call on the phone line, 515-635-1601. And I will throw the link up one more time for anybody that missed it earlier in the live chat. Last chance to call in if you want to make your voice heard. We had somebody on our call line that hung up. I just had you on hold, so give us another try if you want to call in, 515-635-1601. See if we can get... Okay, there's the link in the live chat for anybody who missed it earlier. Real quick, want to thank our sponsors. We'll start with Iowa Smokehouse, and use the code Hawkeyes for 15% off your total order. Been talking about them throughout the college football season, and they continue their sponsorship, their partnership with us from the Hawkeye of the Storm into basketball season. That means into December, January, February, March, and beyond. Stock up now and get it before the winter weather kicks in. Use the code Hawkeyes for 15% off your total order. They've also got barbecue sauces, ketchup, salsas, all kinds of great stuff, courtesy of Iowa Smokehouse and this show from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Use the code Hawkeyes for 15% off your total order. Also want to thank Brad Van Meter and his team down at State Farm in Des Moines. Call them at 515-256-6480 for a quote on auto insurance, renter's insurance, and the like. They are spending countless hours reviewing coverages for their customers, making sure you have a policy that best fits you and your family's needs. They've been doing business across the state of Iowa since 1999, and State Farm is the largest auto insurance company in the nation. Give them a call. Brad Van Meter and his team down at State Farm, 515-256-6480 for a completely free quote. Also want to take a second to thank RTI Threads. I mentioned earlier their Cooper DeJean apparel. They've also got apparel deals with Aaron Graves, Aiden Hall, Zach Lutmer, Carson Shire, some stars of the future, a lot of small-town kids that Iowa fans should want to support. Check it all out at rtithreads.com. You can support Cooper's line at cd3lacesup.com, including the much-coveted shirt, It Wasn't a Fair Catch. So that's all at cd3lacesup.com. And as I said earlier, our RTI Threads player of the game is Molly Davis. I thought she was really good. She's the one person you look at here tonight, Kyle, where it's like she played better offensively than she normally does, and yet she only takes 3 shots. And I get it. She's not necessarily what you'd call a great three-point shooter, but she drew a foul on a 3 today, made all her shots from within the arc, inside the arc, and maybe it's time to try to let her loose a bit offensively. As great as Caitlin is, as somebody said in the chat earlier, sometimes you got to have a Robin to her Batman, and I don't know if Stolke's going to be able to fill that every night.
Yeah, and I think too. I don't know if you remember. I think I made the comment after the Virginia Tech game as well that like she again seemed to be one of the only ones that was capable of not just looking for Caitlin and depending on Caitlin on offense out of inbound plays or bringing the ball up the court or whatever. She seems to have more of a mind of her own of, yes, I want to get Caitlin the ball because she's the best player, but if the best play or the best shot available isn't a Caitlin Clark shot, we still got to find that.
Let's go to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Aloha, my name's Kai. Hey,
Hey, Kai.
Yeah, Molly did good in the fourth quarter. Would have been nice to see her heat up earlier. But I just wanted to say, Kate and Gabby combined for 2 points.
Yep.
When in the last 3 years have you seen that happen? It's such an anomaly. It blows my mind that those two couldn't scratch 8 points together.
Well, I will say this, sir, Kai. Last week against Virginia Tech, I'm looking at the numbers here, and Kate Martin had 10 points. Gabby had 0 points. And
that's fair. But if Kate had 10 tonight, we win, is my point. It is so rare that those two can't scratch. I don't know what the stats are for the last 3 years, but I'll bet you can't find a game where those two didn't combine for at least 10 points. I'm telling you. And Caitlin, I don't know what was wrong with her. That girl is phenomenal. She wasn't tonight. So off night, flu, whatever, it's an anomaly. This is not a glimpse into the future. I don't think it is. I think it's either a wake-up call, a slap in the face. I don't know. Gruber's. I don't think the coach can be blamed. I really don't. I don't know, man. I just picked up your show a couple days ago.
I'm just curious. Are you okay with 32 shots for Caitlin? Is that okay? Do you think that's a winning formula moving forward?
Desperate times call for desperate measures. And I think Caitlin was desperate tonight. I don't know why. I'm not in the mindset of that team. Sure. I love those girls. I've been following for a couple of years. I just got on the bandwagon. When I first heard about Caitlin, I did some research and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Never seen it before since Jackie Stiles. Never seen a ball player like her ever. Yeah. And I'm convinced that tonight was an anomaly. And I think it's the same thing that happened to them last year when they lost. Oh God, I can't remember. And then they took off.
Well, they lost to Kansas State, and they lost to this same team last year.
Is that true?
Yeah, they lost at Kansas State a year ago. Now that was a game that was played in the 80s. It was certainly not a game where the offense struggled, but that was a game they lost to an unranked Kansas State team. So I'm not saying you're wrong at all, sir. I think you bring up some valid points. This is sort of an anomaly to see those two gals struggle from the field. I will say a concern that I have, and we've been talking about a little bit, is I'm looking through the official box scores for the first 4 games of the season, and we go back to game 1. We talk about Gabby Marshall, played 21 minutes in game 1, 0 of 3 from 3, 0 points for Gabby Marshall in game 1. Then you go to Virginia Tech, and Gabby Marshall goes 0 for 6 with 0 points. Then you go to the game tonight, and Gabby Marshall goes for 2 points, 1 of 4. I mean, that's 3 of 4 games where she's not making anything, not giving you anything offensively. That is not good. Kate Martin, this was kind of certainly an anomaly for her, but I am a little bit concerned with Gabby right now. She shot decently well on the road at UNI, but you can't go 3 of 4 games where you're not giving your team anything from the field.
I hear you with both ears, and I'm not arguing, but I just remember when it was money time, she came through last year.
Yeah.
And and tonight, I don't know. I don't know what it was. It certainly wasn't money time. I felt that there was some desperation out there, but I can't put my finger on. I don't know. Maybe these girls got to get back in the corner. I don't know what the answer is, but I believe in my brain and my heart and my gut that this is not who they are, and it's not a glimpse of what's to become of them. I don't understand tonight. I just don't understand. It will remain a mystery. They should have won that game. They're hands down a better team. I think they can beat South Carolina. I want LSU in a rematch. I believe we have the tools to compete. They're just not. It seems like they're not on the same page. They're running plays, but they're different. They're different. They're different plays. They're not executing, as Coach Prime would say. They're just not executing, and they're making little mistakes that are killing them in the end.
Well,
I hear you. 32 shots is too much, and Gabby needs to produce. But I'm not throwing in the towel. I'm not a fair weather bandwagon guy. I'm a believer in them.
Well, I appreciate your perspective, and I don't think any of us are giving up. I think there's some concerns, some rightful concerns.
I agree.
But by the way,
I'm
Kai,
not saying you are.
Can I ask you where you're calling from, Kai?
Right now, I'm in Southern California.
What part? Can I ask you what part?
Sure, I'm in the high desert, about 77 miles east of Palm Springs.
Okay, because I had family.
I can tell you the town. You wouldn't know where it is.
Okay, well, I'll tell you a town where I had some family until about 3 years ago. I had family in Beaumont.
Oh, I know. But okay, where I'm living is where I graduated high school. My mom and dad retired. They're gone now. I'm Hawaiian. I'm from Hawaii, but I came back to be close to them before they passed, and I ended up staying. But I'm in 29 Palms.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, went out there.
Did you go to school? Did you go to school in Beaumont?
No, I didn't. I just have I had some family that lived out there for about 3 or 4 years. I actually went out there one time, visited Palm Springs, golfed in Palm Springs. My last night there, we had a 4.5 magnitude earthquake centered right on Beaumont, so I got to experience that as an Iowa guy. That was cool. So,
I experienced a 6.9 in Hawaii.
Wow. Well, that's a lot bigger.
The day the volcano erupted. So, yeah, they're kind of interesting, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. It was an experience. But Kai, I appreciate you calling in, sir, and please.
And I appreciate your show, sir. I just picked you up 2 days ago.
Well, appreciate
and
that.
I'm subscribed, and I'm following you. You got a great voice, bro. I'm going to tell you that right now.
I appreciate that, Kai. Thank you very much.
God bless. Aloha.
Thank you, sir. All right. Appreciate Kai calling in. Always love to hear from new viewers, too. Always love to hear that we're reaching new parts of the country and new parts of the world. And Hawkeye fans are everywhere, Kyle. We know that. So let's go to, I think it's going to be our final caller of the night, our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line.
Yeah, I'm gonna make it nice, short, and easy for you guys. I'm gonna ask you guys a question. Can y'all hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, so I'm gonna ask you a question about the game tonight, and then I'm gonna hang up and listen to you for the answer.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm gonna ask you guys, why do y'all think that Caitlin Clark did not take the ball to the rim? She didn't try to initiate contact. That was unusual for her. She didn't try to get fouled. Could it be because of LaCoya Lee, the big post player from Kansas State? And I'm just curious to know why y'all think she didn't take the ball to the basket. So I'm going to hang up and listen to y'all response.
Well, appreciate that, sir. I don't have an answer for that other than we can speculate on her health and on how she was feeling. there was a comment earlier about her kind of warming up her hands more than she normally would pregame. I'm assuming that was somebody that was there in person at Carver that noticed that. My guess is Lisa Bluter addressed that postgame, and we'll get to hear that. But the only thing I can think of, Kyle, is when anybody's fatigued. I know from my basketball playing days, I certainly never played college basketball, but playing basketball in general, the last thing you want to do when you're tired is drive and generate contact, and you're more apt to settle for shots. And, sometimes it's hard to tell, I think, differentiate with Caitlin. What is her settling and what is her just taking outrageous shots? There were several moments in that, especially in that second half, even in the third quarter, where I'm like, bad shot, Caitlin. Now, sometimes we say that. I remember the infamous Steve Kerr look with the Steph Curry shot. It was probably 4 or 5 years ago, where he goes like this, and the shot goes in, and Steve Kerr just kind of turns around like, what do you do? What do you say? Sometimes great players make ridiculous shots, and I've seen Luka Doncic do it, but I'm not going to hold back and saying still there were several of those that were just bad shots. Way too early in the shot clock, ball never moved, settling from deep. I thought Kansas State contested the threes really well, but maybe part of that was the fact that she was fatigued for one reason or another. But I don't want to sound like I'm making excuses for Kansas State or for Iowa, because I thought Kansas State was really good defensively and made things difficult on her. When she did drive early in the game, she drew a lot of fouls, and that's one thing she did against Virginia Tech so well, was get to the line.
Yeah, and it's the driving early in the game too. I often compare it to like boxing. If anybody watches boxing, of taking body shots early in a fight. A lot of times you have fighters with big right hands that go for these big knockouts, going for the head, right? But a lot of boxing coaches would tell you go for the body, because it adds up later in rounds. You get to round 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and all of those body blows, you look up and at a certain point you can't breathe because of the body blows. And a lot of times that's what happens with the fouls, where people are in and out of the game, they're out of rhythm, they might foul out. And that's something that she's really, really, really good at, is drawing enough fouls to the point where she can do damage that way. But just in general, I think Caitlin taking 16 threes out of 32 shots. 32 shots is too many, period. But 16 of them being threes, if she's not making 50, 60, 70% of those, and again, just to be clear, we've had a lot of people, and we've talked about 32 shots being too many. 32 shots is not too many if she's shooting over 50%. If she's having a good game, then 32 shots is completely okay. But she entered the fourth quarter, 7 or 8 for, I don't know exactly what it was, 7 or 8 for 25 or something. I don't know whatever the exact number was. She was in the 40-35% range before the fourth quarter. That's not a quarter to be jacking up 7 or 8 shots on top of the 25 that she'd already taken.
I'm looking up the numbers here before we log off for the night. I just, not to harp on this too long, but I do think it's valid, given the fact that Gabby Marshall came back for an extra year, and given the fact that she's perceived to be this really solid shooter. And we saw Peyton Sanford, as I mentioned earlier, come out of a really weird slump that lasted way too long last year. And I'm adding up these numbers, so give me a second. Lemansky at the super chat: do the Mavericks take bad shots? Hoping K-State bigs will turn out elite. Do Mavericks take bad shots? Is he talking about Dallas? What is he talking about here? I'm confused.
I don't know. He's either referencing the Dallas Mavericks or like a trailblazing player like Caitlin that's just different than everybody else. I don't know.
Because I've mentioned the Mavs a couple of times today during the show, so I'm just
Well, I could tell you a team that does not take very many bad shots are the Dallas Mavericks, because they are very dependent on Luka Doncic. But Luka gets wherever he wants to go, whenever he wants to get there. And when he finds sharpshooters, they're open and they take good shots. So if that's what he's asking, that's not a team that takes bad shots.
Luka sometimes does take a lot of shots, but he's had very efficient games this year as well, where he's not shooting very well, and he just plays within himself and doesn't take too many shots and takes what he has in front of him, and his stat line looks okay. But when you watch it on the screen, you're like, okay, he's having an off night. And there was a difference too. This is a totally different game. And Luka Doncic has a guy like Kyrie Irving. He's got pro players all around him. I think it's fair to say Caitlin Clark is working with less relative to the sport, relative to the competition. She is.
Yeah, she is. She's
You know,
working
not
with a lot less.
comparing professional men's basketball with college women's basketball, but relative to the competition, I think it's fair that Caitlin's working with less. Ryan says, why isn't O'Grady playing more? That's a question we've had. I don't. Do you have any insight on that? You've been scouring the message boards, Kyle?
I don't know. I mean, I certainly don't have any answers that would be better than what you would come up with. But I mean, she doesn't look confident. She doesn't look like she gets out there and I mean, backup bigs. I mean, you think of backup bigs. Certainly, from watching NFL or watching a lot of NBA basketball. Backup bigs are energy guys. They're guys that come in and they pound. You know, they bang on the glass with whoever the starting big of the other team is. I mean, those are people that come in and should add a pop to the game. And she just doesn't. To me, she just doesn't add that pop that you'd like to see from a backup center.
Do you want to guess? I mean, I gave you the numbers earlier, so maybe if you were writing them down, you can add these up. But I just added it all up. UNI game aside, okay, 3 of the 4 games I mentioned, Gabby has struggled offensively. You want to guess what her field goal percentage is in those 3 games total?
What did she shoot in the UNI game?
Well, not counting the UNI game. She was 5 of 10 in the UNI games. You're going to probably do the math. You're looking at her total stats, aren't you?
No, I'm not. I'm not trying to look at it before I tell you. But I mean, what did she shoot? She had 17 points in that game, didn't she?
Yeah, 17 points in that game. But again, I'm only talking about the 3 other games.
I mean, she hasn't made a 3 outside of that game. I don't know if she's even made so she had 2 points tonight, so she made 1 shot tonight. So I don't know, maybe one of 11 or 1 of 12.
She's 1 of 13, which is good for 7.7%. 7% from the field, 3 of the 4 games. I mean, that's, I get it. She doesn't create her own shot. She doesn't take a ton of shots. But if they're going to be able to take pressure off Caitlin Clark, space the floor like they did down the stretch last year without Warnock and without the presence that was Monica Sonano, they got to get 3-point shooting out of Kate Martin, out of Gabby Marshall. Or it's got to be someone like a Falter, or it's McCabe, who didn't play tonight, or it's Feuerbach, or it's Molly Davis. But somebody has to make threes, and this team's just not making threes right now.
Yeah, and I understand, too, that, Gabby Marshall has a lot of seniority here, and she richly deserves it after what she did last year. But, like, at a certain point, we get 10 games into the season and this trend continues, she's gonna have to get less minutes, I think.
Lemansky says he's pulling my chain. Thank you for being here, Lemansky. Always appreciate the fun. And again, Iowa falling, the women falling at the hands of the Kansas State Wildcats, 65-58 in Carver. A few quick stats to run through before we sign off for the night. I kind of ran through some box score stats earlier. I won't bore everybody with those again, but I will give you some team stats to keep in mind. Iowa on the night shot just 36.1% from the field and 9.5% from 3. They were 66.7% from the free throw line. No threes made in the first quarter or the fourth quarter. I don't really think that percentage-wise, we're talking about team numbers. I don't really think 21 threes is too many to be taking for an Iowa team, but
not at all.
Again, not getting in transition, it hampers the flow of this offense, and there just weren't many answers from anybody, player or coach, this evening for Iowa. And it's not like Kansas State shot very well themselves. They made just 6 threes on 23 attempts. They were shooting 39.4% from the field for the game, and they were 58% from the free throw line on 12 attempts. So, again, not good stats either way offensively, and that's the type of game, if you're the Wildcats, you wanted to play tonight. Iowa had just two fast break points. 2.
And they didn't have a single quarter with 18 or more points either. I mean, this was wall to wall a bad offensive game. It wasn't like they had a hot second quarter or whatever, and then they cooled off tremendously in the second half. I mean, they were never hot for a second, really.
And when you only have 2 transition buckets and you're not making threes, obviously the turnovers are going to become more of a sore eye. 14 points for Kansas State off 16 Iowa turnovers. Just too many turnovers. Iowa capitalized for 5 points on just 9 turnovers for Kansas State, but you're losing that category handily. The Hawkeyes will bounce back. I'll try to bounce back against the likes of Drake this Sunday That's a team that pushed them to overtime a year ago. Now, I've not studied the Drake roster, Kyle. I know they're, I think, picked second to UNI in the Missouri Valley. Iowa obviously had no problems dispatching the Panthers a couple of days ago. And this team is coming to Carver this year, and it's different than going to, the Knapp Center in a small, tight environment with a bunch of blue. But they need to come out and perform well on Saturday or Sunday and shoot the ball well, like they did against UNI, against Drake's counterpart on Sunday.
Yeah, and I don't know anything about Drake either, to be honest, but the only thing I've seen is I've got it in front of me, they beat Iowa State by 12 at home on the 12th. So that's their only real team that they played, and they showed out well.
And, of course, Iowa State is suffering a little bit. They suffered from the transfer portal a bit during the offseason, but still a really solid program. I don't know what to expect from the Cyhawk game. This game put a lot of question marks, and I think in a lot of fans' minds and hearts. But as our caller Kai from California brought up earlier, this does seem like a one-off. There are valid concerns to be had, but let's not read into more than just this one game for now. Just like we won't read into the Iowa football offense more than just the one performance this last week against Rutgers. They're going to prove it here on Saturday against Illinois.
I would say, as a fan, don't read into it too much. I hope that the women don't treat it like a one-off, because if the women treat it like a one-off, then it won't be a one-off.
Yeah, definitely corrections to be made from both coaches and players. Again, Iowa Drake Sunday, 6 p.m. Central Time on Fox Sports 1. Iowa Arkansas State Friday, the men. That's tomorrow. 7 p.m. Central Time for the tip, and post game to follow a little after 9. And I promise eventually, folks, we're going to get Gary Close back involved. Gary's gallivanting around the country, so we'll get him back involved here soon when the bigger games come. Of course, Creighton was a big game, but we'll get Big Ten action and, of course, Cyhawk game and all that good stuff coming up for the men and the Thanksgiving week tournament next week. Kyle, appreciate you hopping on for a few minutes, and we'll probably either talk to you tomorrow, talk to you Saturday, or whatever, but appreciate you being a part of the show again.
Yep. Appreciate it, Cory.
All right, for Kyle, I'm Cory Brada from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Again, this show, along with all of our other long-form content, will be podcasted from the Hawkeye of the Storm on your favorite podcast platforms. Until next time, we'll talk to you very soon.